Have you ever felt like the way you process the world doesn't quite match the roles you've been expected to play? Maybe you've been asked to toughen up when your instinct is to feel deeply. Or maybe you've been told to loosen up when you naturally seek order, structure, and logic. Sound familiar? The truth is, your brain is wired in a very specific way, a way that determines how you interpret reality, relate to people, and make decisions. This isn't about personality quizzes or labels. This is about how your consciousness is shaped from the inside out. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in psychology, proposed that we each operate from a core psychological function. These core ways of processing the world form what he called personality types. But unlike modern pop psychology, Jung's theory wasn't about putting you in a box. It was about giving you the key to get out of one. He outlined four core cognitive functions: thinking, the logical mind, focused on structure, analysis, and objectivity; feeling, the values-based processor, guided by emotions, ethics, and human connection; sensation, the grounded realist, attuned to the present moment and concrete facts; intuition, the abstract seeker, drawn to ideas, patterns, and what lies beneath the surface. You might assume you already know where you fit. But pause for a moment. What if the role you've been playing isn't your authentic type at all? What if, since childhood, you were conditioned to act against your natural function, taught to suppress your instincts in favor of social approval? That conditioning runs deep. It begins with parents trying to shape our behavior. It continues through education systems that reward one kind of intelligence and punish another, and without realizing it, we adapt. We pretend. We perform. And in doing so, we drift further from who we truly are. Jung believed most people spend their lives wearing psychological masks, mistaking them for their identity. And unless we begin to question how we think, feel, and see the world, we live inside a version of ourselves that isn't really ours. Understanding your dominant function is more than an insight, it's a liberation. It allows you to stop fighting your nature and start building a life aligned with it. But even deeper than your dominant function lies something far more important: the part of you you've ignored, the missing piece, the shadow of your type, and it's there that transformation truly begins. So as we explore Jung's four core functions and how they shape the way you move through the world, ask yourself not who you were told to be, but who you actually are. Before we explore the individual personality types in detail, we need to understand the foundation of Jung's system, the attitude through which you direct your mental energy. Carl Jung believed that every individual possesses both an internal and external orientation. He called these two attitudes introversion and extroversion, but not in the way they're often misunderstood today. In popular culture, introversion is often equated with shyness, and extroversion with sociability. But for Jung, it wasn't about how social you are. It was about where your energy flows, where your center of gravity lies. The introvert turns inward. They focus on reflection, memory, and inner depth. They process experiences quietly and deeply, often needing solitude to recharge and make sense of life. The extrovert, on the other hand, directs their attention outward, to people, events, and external reality. They gather energy from interaction, action, and stimulation. Neither one is superior. Neither one is a flaw. They're simply different lenses through which consciousness operates. But here's where it gets interesting. Introversion and extroversion are just the entry points. Once you understand how your energy flows, the next question is what function that energy is powering. This brings us to the four fundamental functions Jung identified as the building blocks of your psychological life. Thinking types prioritize structure and logic. They analyze, assess, and form conclusions based on facts and objective principles. Their goal? To make sense of the world with clarity and reason. Feeling, not to be confused with emotion alone. Feeling types make decisions based on values, harmony, and meaning. They ask, what feels right? Not what's merely efficient. They care deeply about human connection and ethical alignment. Sensation sensory types are grounded in the physical. They rely on direct experience, on what they can see, touch, hear, and measure. Their perception of reality is rooted in what's concrete and present. Intuition. Intuitive types perceive the unseen. They look for patterns, metaphors, and hidden relationships. Their world is one of possibility, imagination, and what could be, not just what is. Each of us uses all four of these functions, but one will almost always dominate. One will shape the majority of our thinking, decisions, relationships, and even our worldview. It becomes the hero of our personality. But Jung warned that relying solely on your dominant function leads to imbalance. It creates blind spots. And those blind spots can quietly sabotage your relationships, goals, and self-worth, unless you learn to identify them. As we now dive into each function in its extroverted and introverted form, ask yourself, do I recognize myself in what's being described, or do I see a version of myself that I've been suppressing? This isn't about putting yourself in a box. It's about finally understanding the one you've been living in and learning how to step out of it. Carl Jung's genius wasn't just in naming personality traits, it was in showing how they interact, how the functions manifest through either an outward-facing, extroverted, or inward-facing, introverted expression. Each function, thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition, has two possible modes. The result is 8 unique cognitive types, each one offering a distinct way of perceiving and relating to the world. Let's explore them one by one. 1. Extroverted thinking. The strategist, extroverted thinking types are the engineers of reality. They value logic, efficiency, and measurable outcomes. These individuals are goal-oriented, driven to structure the external world according to rational systems. They see the world like a chessboard. Every move calculated, every action with a purpose. Data, results, and plans dominate their thinking. They are the architects, the organizers, the managers. But their strength can become their weakness. In their quest for control, they may dismiss emotions or creativity as distractions. They can forget that people aren't problems to be solved. 2. Introverted thinking, the analyst. While the types build external systems, types go inward. They search for internal consistency and truth. Their minds dissect ideas with surgical precision, breaking apart assumptions until only what's essential remains. They don't act until they've thought deeply. They don't speak until their thoughts have crystallized. They seek understanding more than action, clarity more than results. But this internal process can isolate them. Lost in reflection, they may struggle to connect their brilliant thoughts with the external world. Insightful, but often unheard. 3. Extroverted feeling. The harmonizer, types tune into others like emotional antennas. They instinctively sense the mood in a room, the tension in a conversation, the unspoken needs of others. Their goal? Harmony. They are natural caregivers, counselors, and diplomats. They adapt easily, saying what needs to be said to make others feel understood and accepted. But this deep empathy can come at a price. In prioritizing others' feelings, they may lose touch with their own. They risk becoming mirrors, reflecting others, but forgetting their own reflection. 4. Introverted feeling. The truth seeker. Types operate from a powerful inner compass. Their values aren't dictated by trends or approval. They ask, does this feel authentic to me? This integrity drives them to create, protest, defend, and sacrifice. Many great artists, poets, and reformers are led by grounded in personal truth and moral clarity. But that same depth can isolate them. Misunderstood, often silent, they may struggle to share what they feel, fearing no one else will truly understand. 5. Extroverted sensation. The experiencer. Types live through their senses. They thrive in the present moment, grounded in what's real, tangible, and vibrant. They're often athletic, artistic, or hands-on, with a hunger for direct experience. They don't theorize about life, they live it. They move fast, react fast, and adapt quickly. The world is their playground, but their strength in the now can blind them to the future. Planning may bore them. Reflection may frustrate them. They risk chasing constant stimulation at the expense of long-term fulfillment. 6. Introverted sensation. The archivist. Types perceive reality through memory, tradition, and continuity. They value reliability and familiarity. Every new experience is filtered through a vast internal library of the past. They remember the details others miss, the way a room smelled, the tone of someone's voice, the rhythm of a well-worn routine. They honor what's proven, tested, and true. But their devotion to the past can make change feel threatening. They may resist innovation or become stuck in cycles simply because they are comfortable. 7. Extroverted intuition. The visionary need types don't just see what is, they see what could be. They're driven by possibilities, innovation, and ideas that spiral in every direction. They connect dots others didn't even know existed. They're often creative entrepreneurs, inventors, and storytellers, riding a wave of constant discovery. But with so many possibilities, grounding can be hard. They may start many things and finish few. Their energy can become chaotic unless tethered by focus and discipline. 8. Introverted intuition. The mystic Ni types process information slowly but profoundly. They move beyond logic and emotion into a realm of insight. Their minds are drawn to symbolism, foresight, and abstract truth. They may receive sudden aha moments that seem prophetic. They anticipate future events, sense patterns, and interpret meaning beneath the surface. But their internal world can be so rich that it's hard to translate into words. Others may not understand how they know what they know, and they may not either. Everyone has a dominant type, but not only one. You aren't just one of these 8 types. You use all of them, to some extent, but one of them acts as your dominant function, the primary way you process the world. Understanding it unlocks clarity, why certain jobs drain you, why some conversations energize you, and why you feel out of place in some environments. But Jung warned, focusing only on your dominant function creates imbalance. The deeper journey, the path to individuation, comes from integrating the other parts of yourself. Your personality is not a fixed label. It's not just a single type you check off in a quiz. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is more like a system, a living architecture of mental processes working in tandem and tension. While most people focus on their dominant trait, Jung emphasized that the true key to wholeness lies in understanding how all your functions work together. Every individual has a psychological hierarchy, a structured order in which the 4 primary cognitive functions show up and interact. This includes dominant function, your core operating system, auxiliary function, your balancing counterpart, tertiary function, a developing trait, often subconscious inferior function, your blind spot, and your secret potential. Let's break each one down. 1. The dominant function, your inner hero. Your dominant function is the central voice in your psyche. It's how you naturally process the world, the function you lean on the most. If you're a dominant thinker, logic governs your decisions. If you lead with feeling, your compass is emotional harmony. If you rely on sensation, you trust reality as it is. If you favor intuition, you're drawn to potential over presence. This dominant trait forms early in life, and it becomes the lens through which you interpret almost everything. It shapes your preferences, your instincts, your worldview. It's not all of you, but it feels like you. 2. The auxiliary function, your psychological counterweight. If your dominant function is the main character, your auxiliary function is the supporting role that balances it. For example, a dominant thinker may have feeling as an auxiliary, bringing humanity to their logic. An intuitive might balance themselves with sensation, grounding their visions in practicality. A feeling type might lean on thinking to organize their decisions with clarity. This dynamic creates psychological harmony. The auxiliary function doesn't challenge the dominant. It complements it. It provides flexibility. It gives you range. And while it's not as strong as your dominant trait, it often plays a major role in relationships, creativity, and leadership. The tertiary function, the hidden supporter. Next comes the tertiary function, often underdeveloped but present. This function lives in the background. It's like a quiet assistant, sometimes ignored, sometimes misused. But as you grow, mature, and reflect, it begins to emerge. In early adulthood, your tertiary function might feel like a fuzzy instinct. You might not fully trust it, but with time and awareness, it becomes a source of unexpected strength, especially in personal growth and creative expression. The inferior function, the shadow within. And then there's the inferior function, the part of your psyche that feels alien, even threatening. If your dominant function is what comes naturally, your inferior function is what often causes conflict, discomfort, or confusion. It's where you're most likely to project your insecurities or misunderstand others. A dominant thinker might struggle deeply with emotional complexity. A dominant sensor might feel lost in abstract theories. A dominant feeler might resist cold logic. A dominant intuitive might find details exhausting. But this is the paradox Jung uncovered. Your inferior function is not your enemy. It's your portal to transformation. Buried in your weakest function is the key to balance, empathy, and resilience. When you avoid it, it sabotages you. But when you confront and integrate it, you expand. This integration is at the heart of what Jung called individuation, becoming a whole person, not by doubling down on strengths, but by embracing your shadows. Personality is a dynamic system. Think of it like this. Your dominant function leads the way. Your auxiliary balances the lead. Your tertiary supports from the sidelines. Your inferior hides in the basement until you're ready to unlock its gift. This psychological hierarchy isn't fixed. It evolves. It grows with you. And as you begin to work with all four, not just the comfortable ones, you unlock something extraordinary, a version of yourself that is no longer fragmented, but unified. Most people never truly meet themselves. They walk through life reacting, adapting, performing, shaped by expectations, habits, and survival. They may know how to act smart, how to look kind, how to seem in control. But behind those behaviors, a deeper question echoes. Who am I really? Carl Jung believed that we are not just a collection of traits. We are systems in motion, unfolding over time, with light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, all woven into one complex organism. This journey toward authenticity is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by integrating all parts of yourself. Not just the part that the world applauds, not just the function that feels safe, but also the parts you've avoided, neglected, or suppressed. What does integration look like? Let's say you're a dominant thinker. You're sharp, decisive, logical. But perhaps you've struggled in emotionally charged conversations. Maybe you've dismissed feelings, in yourself or others, as irrational. That avoidance doesn't disappear. It builds tension inside. And it's not until you turn toward your inferior feeling function that the integration begins. That's where growth lives. Or maybe you're a deep feeler, empathetic, morally grounded. But when conflict arises, you hesitate. You bend to please. You avoid hard truths until you invite your thinking function in to help you set boundaries, clarify goals, and honor your needs. True growth, Jung said, isn't becoming something else. It's becoming complete, and that requires embracing both your nature and your potential. The role of the unconscious, Jung often said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Beneath the surface of your conscious mind lies the shadow, the parts of you you've rejected. Anger, vulnerability, shame, desire, fear. Not because they're evil, but because you were taught to believe they were unacceptable. That shadow doesn't vanish. It simply retreats. And from the shadows, it begins to influence your choices, sabotage your progress, and project itself onto others. The path of individuation means facing your shadow, not to eliminate it, but to integrate it, to say, yes, this too is me, and I will no longer hide from it. In doing so, you reclaim power you didn't know you had. You become less reactive, more grounded, and infinitely more you. The cost of avoiding growth. Most psychological pain, burnout, anxiety, conflict, stems not from failure, but from misalignment. Living against your natural function exhausts you. Avoiding your inferior function blinds you. Denying your shadow fragments you. Without integration, you live as a mask, a persona, while your real self waits underneath, unheard. But when you begin the work, reading, reflecting, exploring your type, you begin to align. You stop forcing yourself into spaces that drain you. You stop expecting others to think like you. You begin to design a life that fits, not because you've changed, but because you've finally returned to who you are. You are not static. Your type is not a trap. This framework is not a label. It's a map of your potential, your blind spots, your inner compass. Individuation doesn't happen in a weekend retreat or a single book. It's a lifelong unfolding. Some days you'll retreat, you'll resist, you'll fall back into familiar patterns. But slowly, with intention, your unconscious becomes known. Your inferior function becomes accessible. Your shadow becomes your teacher. And step by step, you become whole. So what's next? Ask yourself, what is my dominant function? And how has it shaped my world? What is my inferior function? And how have I resisted it? What am I ready to stop hiding from? Then explore. Read Jung's psychological types. Reflect on your personal patterns. Observe your reactions. Study others. Not to judge, but to understand how their minds work differently from yours. And most importantly, be willing to evolve. You are not your label. You are not just a thinker or a feeler. You are a whole being in progress, capable of logic and empathy, imagination and presence, structure and spontaneity. The true privilege of life, as Jung said, is not to become someone new, but to finally become who you've always been beneath the surface. If this video helped you see yourself more clearly, imagine who else might need it. Share this with someone exploring their path. Like it if it stirred something in you. And subscribe if you're ready to go deeper. Because here at Carl Jung Depths, the journey has only just begun.